So let me ask you something. Just how much do you like Symphony of the Night? Like, really ask yourself that question. Then I want you to look at this guy and then this guy and then tell me what the difference really is.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Harmony of Dissonance just about wishes it could be Symphony of the Night, and that's kind of odd. It's odd for a few reasons. The first being it's not really equipped to be that, considering what they were able to pull out of the GBA at the time. I mean, sure, it looks good. They got that whole after-image run thing going on. Certain backgrounds look great, and a bunch of animations are pretty smooth, but then you have a strange, almost accidental storyline. There are weird momentum issues. Parts are almost useless, and the music is, well, not as good as the rest of the series. There are some exceptions in the soundtrack, but for the most part, it's rough, to say the least. Well, at least as it's presented here on the Game Boy Advance, anyway. This game is the middle child of the Game Boy Advance trilogy, but it's the first Game Boy Advance game that Iga and crew had worked on, and since most of the crew involved in this had worked on Symphony of the Night, they might have tried maybe just a bit too hard to make Symphony 2 instead of trying something a bit different like what we saw with Aria of Sorrow. That's not to say that they didn't try. Harmony does take a lot from Symphony, but at the same time, it's also borrowing a bit from an unlikely source. Simon's Quest. Yeah, one of the original NES games from way back. In that game, it was all about collecting Dracula's things, items, parts. I don't know, you had to collect some Dracula parts. While that game saw Simon going all around the local towns in Wallachia, Harmony sees Just exploring all of Dracula's castles. Yes, plural, to collect these pieces. This game also takes a bit of inspiration from the, at the time, somewhat recently released 3D title, Lament of Innocence. How so? Well, stick around and I'll get to that. As an added bonus, Death actually does some stuff in this game, and this would be the second to last time that he plays a part in the story outside of just kind of being part of the boss rotation. Like with Aria, as you will find out in Circle when that video is done, I have no experience with this game. So this is my first actual run in Harmony of Dissonance. Will it wow me with its visuals, the story, the music? Probably not, but we'll find out. Hey everyone, my name is Leon, and this is my first look and retrospective review of Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance.
From this day on, the Belmont clan will hunt the night!
Right off the bat, after I had gained control of this character and started to play the game, I noticed some things. Just can dash, and not just backdash. I mean, you can move both forwards and back. This is strange. Not every Belmont gets extra mobility like this. Richter has his moveset, and to be fair, it is pretty expansive, but he has no dash. Julius gets his Raging Demon-like ability, and that's kinda it. barring any fancy footwork that the 3D Belmonts, Leon and Trevor, had in their games, you're not going to get a whole lot of mobility out of the Belmonts. For whatever reason, though, they gave Juiced the ability to dash
forward and back, and then forward and back, and then go forward and back, then put 1 foot forward.
But because of this ability, you don't really ever just run or walk, which means outside of the first few minutes of this game where you're still getting used to the controls, you'll be skating and shredding your way through this castle. Honestly though, it's not that bad. The movement is quick and snappy, plus they chain together really easily, so that's a huge win for getting anywhere. The problem, however, comes at the cost of absolutely tanking that momentum when you do anything else. You can't dash into whipping without coming to a dead stop after that dash, which can cause some problems when it comes to judging distance. Another odd thing about the momentum is that if you dash and jump, you carry none of that forward movement. You'll still technically jump as if you were moving forward, but only if you were also holding forward. But once those feet leave the ground, your speed is cut harshly. I think it was done just so people couldn't get into places they weren't really supposed to early in the game, but that's just a hunch. Man, trying to explain how a game feels is rough, especially when about 80% of it feels pretty good. I have no other major complaints in terms of how the game controls. It's just a bit stiff, and momentum doesn't really carry with you as you would kind of expect it to. That said, it's far more fluid than Circle of the Moon, but not quite on the same level as Aria. It's getting there, though. A fun aside, I'm sure this is at least somewhat known, or at least I would hope it is. I can't have been the first person to do this, but because I have no experience with this game, I was surprised to find out this little fist sub-weapon here. On its own, it's not really anything special. It uses hearts and is a solid JoJo reference, but, and I don't know why I did this, I found that with the Ice spellbook equipped, it launches Juiced in the direction he's currently facing, as well as giving just a touch, and I'm talking a few tiny pixels worth of height. I had no prior knowledge of this, and really only tried it on a whim because the base fist attack moves Juiced forward ever so slightly in the direction he's facing. Had this been any other spellbook, it would not have worked. But the Ice book is the first one that you get, or at least the first one that I found anyway. Because of this tech, I was able to get a few things early, and that's kind of neat. You gotta love when that dumb need to try something for no real reason pays off. Now this isn't super game breaking, at least I don't think so anyway, but it can help out in some instances where you don't have that double jump just yet. While we're talking about things that don't really feel all that right, the music. Now I will say this, is it as bad as I was led to believe? No, not at all. There are a few songs here that are really good, great even, but I will say they're not all that solid when compared to the rest of the series, and that is solely the blame on the GBA as a system. Now, don't get it twisted. There are plenty of games on this tiny portable SNES, more or less, that sound pretty great. But much like how the Sega Genesis had its signature Genesis twang, the GBA has its own signature, for lack of a better term. That being, it's a bit muddy and just doesn't have the same overall fidelity that the Super Nintendo had. Now, I don't want to get into all the specifics about how and why that is, but to make a long story short, the sound processor on the GBA just wasn't the best. It was good, but it doesn't really hold a candle to what was on the Super Nintendo. And you can make direct comparisons. A Link to the Past was on both systems, and overall, the Super Nintendo, to my ears anyway, sounds better. Hardware limitations are a crazy thing to deal with, and in the case of Harmony, it's been well documented that they just couldn't get it to look the way that it does and still have enough space left over for the music to not be compressed to hell and back. So, we are stuck with the weird, crunchy, harsh tones. It's not that bad, though. And to prove that, I found several fan-made tracks, all of them which are credited down below in the description, for your convenience. It took a bit of time to find these, but they showcase just how good conceptually the songs used in this title are when they aren't taken out back and beaten with file compression. A few other things that were strange to me. One is the fact that there aren't really any hidden rooms in this game. In fact, I don't think I came across a single one, which is strange. Usually these games have hidden rooms and hidden rooms in hidden rooms, so imagine my surprise when I didn't find a single one. There was a false wall, but you don't really need to be whipping anything open, with like one exception, maybe. There was a wall that can be broken, and it's in a save room, but it needs a certain whip tip. Also, it's discolored, so it sticks out as something that you were meant to see and take notice of. Not like your average hidden room, which usually gives little to no hints unless you have an item that informs you about its breakable walls. Another thing, and this one was super bizarre to me, was just how useless the hearts felt in this game. Along with that are the upgrades for the hearts. At the start, hearts are great. They let you use your hunter sub-weapons. No change there, so, that makes sense. But the moment you get your first spellbook, hearts almost don't matter at all. The hearts still act as ammo, but spells use MP, and MP charges back on its own. Slowly, but not so slowly that it's a problem. Just another case of this game trying to be Symphony on the go. Alucard uses both MP and Hunter-style sub-weapons, which is cool, but those are two very clearly different things. The spells that Alucard casts are separate from the sub-weapons that he's using, and these two systems don't really have any overlap. That is not the case here. Each sub-weapon can be used with each spellbook, and these give special and unique effects to the spells and items being used. I mentioned earlier that this game took some ideas from Lament of Innocence, and this is what came from that sharing of ideas. The spell books work along the same lines as the orbs did from that game. The orbs would modify how the sub-weapons would work. How did they balance that with hearts and MP? Well, hearts still acted as ammo even for the modified sub-weapon use. While that game has an MP bar, it's used for a whole other set of things. So here we see, again, a clear distinction between Harmony and its sister titles. Why is Harmony so different? Why does MP take over so hard? I imagine it's because of some sort of limitation in the game's overall design, but I don't really have a solid answer to this question. I suppose, thematically, if, and this is a huge if, the design team was playing some kind of 5D chess, they had already laid out that Juiced would be the most powerful spellcaster in the Belmont line. But then the question of why are the other Belmonts not even more powerful after Juiced then? As the story is presented to us, the Belmont line supposedly gets stronger as time and generations pass. It's why way deep into the future timelines that Julius is able to finally put Dracula down for keeps. I have to think that really the answer here is just the rule of cool, right? They thought this up for Juiced, and it was never meant to be part of the other Belmonts, if only because, for the most part, those games came out before this did. If a rebooted Castlevania did happen, and they chose to stick with the main timeline, they might fit this in as a thematic element. Starting with Leon, who's just a warrior, leading into Trevor, who's just a really great hunter, and after his story, every other Belmont in the lineage would gain some sort of magical power because of Sypha.
I did it!
Gradually, over time, hearts would become less and less useful, but the shift into more magic and MP would be more and more beneficial, which would, at the very least, help this game out just a bit, because as it stands now, the hearts in this game are essentially useless. I mean, sure, you could just turn off the spellbooks, but then you're kind of missing out on what the game wants you to play around with. It's not ideal, and honestly, even this is just a bit of wishful thinking on my part. Come on now, Konami is unlikely to do anything outside of lending the license out to other games and or, Netflix shows. It'd be great to see something like this again, but I doubt anything serious will happen. But man, do I really want to be wrong about that. Hey, real quick, we're getting ready to shift into the story here, so if you want to go through the game on your own, I recommend skipping ahead a bit. But before you do that, if you got this deep in, how about some of that YouTube stuff, yeah? Subscribe, like, and if you're feeling it, maybe a comment. I'd like to hear about your experience with this, and, any other Castlevania game down below. As for my thoughts, well, we're about to dive into that, so stick with it. Let's get back to it. As is tradition at this point, the game opens up with a text crawl. But before we get into that, I want to call attention to the title screen. This isn't something that I would normally call attention to, but this one kinda sticks out. Why? Well, because of this reflection. Every other Castlevania title screen shows bats or, something flying into a single point on the screen, and then the title more or less emerges from that. Technically, that happens here as well, but only after it shows you this reflection of the title in the water. Also, we get a new C in Castlevania. I know that every title covered thus far has had a stylized C, but every title up until this one had the same classic C in Castlevania. It looks like this, with one exception, and that's kind of Super Castlevania 4. Why do I bring this up? Well, aside from being a recent at the time change to the title, this reflection, as it turns out, has some significance. I can't give that away just yet, but stick around and you might find out. Right, so that text crawl, it opens with a direct callback to Simon's quest, which is wild. But 50 years have passed since Simon did his thing, and his grandson, Just, is the current wielder of the vampire killer whip. Is Simon still around? I don't know. According to the wiki, Simon was pushing 30 in Simon's quest, so at best, he would have been somewhere in his early 60s by the time Just was even born. So it's not impossible, but it's not very likely. Anyway, like his grandfather before him, Just is tasked with finding the relics of Dracula and seeing that they are destroyed. At some point, Maxim, Just's longtime friend, went out on a trading expedition and came back 2 years later, heavily injured and with some kind of memory loss going on. Weirdly, though, not all his memories. Maxim is still able to tell Just that Liddy, a childhood friend, has been kidnapped and brought to a castle that just appeared out of nowhere. This is so out of left field that even the game calls these two unexpected guests. Now, it's not uncommon for Dracula to steal away some ladies. I mean, it's happened at least a few times, but it seems unlikely that Dracula would do this here and then do this exact same thing again when Richter is the main character. This, for some reason, has the feeling of trying to justify itself. Just and Maxim just happen to show up at Castlevania's doorstep because, I don't know. The two enter the gate and the game officially starts. Maxim is still pretty injured, so he opts to stay at the gate for now as Just moves forward. A chase sequence starts, and it's an interesting way to get acquainted with the controls. This is how I figured out that Just can dash left or right depending on what shoulder button was pressed. You can see me hit this thing by dashing into it. Oops. I mean, it's not a super big deal, but it was odd to say the least. I wonder what Maxim was thinking as Just was running for his life. Also, is he gonna make his way into the castle after the drawbridge closes? The castle itself, like usual, the beginning part is a standard entryway. I can't get over this afterimage thing going on here. Clearly, Symphony was an influence hard. It was a hard influence. Just even kind of looks like Alucard. Oh, and the save rooms have that hexahedron thing floating in the center of the room. I wonder just how much more will be drawn from that Symphony well. Once you get used to how everything feels in this early part of the castle, you'll run into death. Yes, death. Very early in the castle, just like some other game. More importantly, death has plot relevance. Just like Just and Death have a small back and forth. Just thinks this is Dracula's power at work, and Death doesn't say no. But he doesn't say yes either, so I don't know, who knows. Anyway, he slips away and it's off to explore the castle proper. Man, I gotta say, this game looks really great. The colors pop, the backgrounds are super detailed and neat. Plus there's this Windows music player background looking thing. It's cool. I don't think it pops up really much of anywhere else, which is a little odd. Like, why is this just here? But it does leave an impact, so I guess there's that, right? Questions for later, I'm sure. It wouldn't be long until I found the Ice spellbook. I wouldn't use it much yet, but as I mentioned earlier, I would eventually experiment with how the movement works in this game. Also, the Ice book would become my default spellbook for a long time. I almost never swapped off of it. It weirdly was the best for a lot of sub-weapons. I also noticed way too late in the game, after getting a decent amount of spellbooks and other items, that you can hot swap the spellbooks by pressing up and the left shoulder. I love this as a tool for the player. It took me way too long to figure that out, but man, once I did, it was a solid point in this game's favor. I'm getting distracted though. At some point, I eventually found this item here, the redstone. The redstone is a whip upgrade. It changes the damage typing, or rather, it adds elemental properties to the whip. Like the spellbooks, you will find several. Some add flat damage and others add elemental types to the whip. Some add secondary effects, like the crushing tip. This lets you break down objects in the castle. Think like Link blowing up a cracked wall in Zelda. It's essential for progress. Unlike the spellbooks though, you can't hot swap these, which is kind of a bummer. You're gonna have to menu, and doing that gets to be a bit of a downer. For example, you'll get to a breakable pillar, and you gotta stop, open the menu, equip the item for the whip, charge it up, break the wall, unequip the crush tip because it's bad, and then continue onward. It's unfortunate because it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens enough to be a bit of a pain point. Well, as far as how the moment-to-moment gameplay goes. In other games that demand certain items, even in this genre, you can more or less just use a few buttons to get to it. Super Metroid comes to mind, and they found a way to get around this. It wasn't very elegant, but it was enough. Granted, the SNES controller had 2 extra buttons on it, so there was that working in favor for it. Unfortunately for the whip upgrades, there are more of those than there are spellbooks, so trying to hot swap would have been kind of a pain, but still, something of that nature would have been nice. Oh, here we go. This right here. This is the big brain moment that I had. That Ice Fist gives huge horizontal movement, more than I thought it would. Because of that, I was able to get this relic early. How early? I don't know exactly, but that's a plus 10 in luck, so, I'm here for that. I make the mental note to check for other possible spots where I can use this to my advantage, but honestly, there aren't many, or at least many that I could find. So this tech, while neat, brings nothing of really any consequence later. Still having a rough time getting to the grips of the momentum and just the overall feel of this game. Before long, I find the giant bat boss, and like every other giant bat, it goes down pretty easily. One thing that's odd to me is the map being gray. Blue is usually the base color, but not for this game, I guess. It's not bad, but it doesn't sit right with me. Speaking of the map, it feels odd. I don't know, areas feel a bit disjointed. Certain areas exist in spaces that don't seem like they would be the best fit overall for where they are. Like the Wailing Way here is kind of deep into the castle, so why the open sky background? And mountains. It's strange. But I suppose it's no different than any other version of the castle. So far, so good. I don't really see why this game gets the short end of the stick. Outside of some of the music, and even then, it's not all that bad, the game itself is fine so far. A bit janky, maybe, but it's good. The boss here is a living armor, and it's about as threatening as one would expect. Right before this, however, you run into Maxim, and he's really zoned out here, just kind of wobbling around like some sort of Mortal Kombat character waiting for that sweet finish, Juice is able to snap him out of it, and instead of teaming up, Maxim decides to hit Juice with the old Scooby-Doo logic here, splitting up to cover more ground. Sure, why not? Beating the boss grants us the ability to slide, and with that we can explore some more of the castle. I eventually found myself back at that cool Windows music player backroom room again, and slid under this to get to a teleporter room. Now, I haven't found any other teleporter rooms, so I didn't think this one would really do much of anything, but I tried it anyway. Also, take a look at this. It's another Symphony of the Night thing here. It looks almost identical, if not, just actually being the same. Juiced makes a comment after teleporting that this place is different, which, yeah, of course it is, man. We just teleported, so, naturally things are going to look different. It's a different room. Duh. Another spot with another strange background. This one is a full-on volcano and fire everywhere. Also, a lot of things here are gray in color, except this crystal cave. This is neat. I like this spot. It's certainly different, and it lends an almost otherworldly air to the castle. Somewhat par for the course, though, I suppose. But this type of idea doesn't really pop up all that often. When's the last time you explored a crystal cave in Castlevania, One thing I noticed, and I made reference to it earlier, but right around this point is when I started to really feel that I wasn't finding any breakable walls. I would normally find at least a few by this point. I whip certain spots on the map and get nothing from them. Spots that I am certain would have something to offer, but they just don't. The term game sense gets tossed around every so often, and I have played a bunch of these games, so to me, my game sense was going off all the time. I would walk up to a wall, one that I for sure would have put something behind it if it were me, only for nothing to be there. And because of that, I would start to whip at almost every dead-end wall that I thought for sure would house a secret. Only none of them ever did. It was so against everything that almost every other game post Symphony of the Night has done in the series, and to further push it out, what every other game has done in this genre because of games like Metroid and Castlevania. They established this norm. So it was very jarring to have zero. There are zero hidden areas on this map in a Castlevania game. Sure, there are spots that require certain upgrades, but as far as breaking walls are concerned, none. It was driving me so crazy, I had to look it up. I felt like I was going mad from all of this, but yeah, barring a few false walls that you can just jump into, there's nothing that's breakable. I couldn't believe it. To add even more weird on top of that, I found a chair, just a regular chair, out in the castle. It was collectible. Why? That's incredibly out of left field. I would find the answer to that real soon, however. In the lower part of the castle, there is a room that Juice just kind of claims as his own. He calls it tasteless and decides to add furniture to it to, spruce it up a bit. So, not only is Juiced a competent vampire hunter, the most powerful so far in the Belmont bloodline, but he can add interior decorator to his list of accomplishments. I, for one, can't wait for the HGTV show Castlevania Concerto of Furnishings. This little addition doesn't do anything for the story. It's something you can 100% omit and you would lose nothing from it. There's no extra item or anything that comes from decorating the room, just a small side objective for the sake of it, I suppose. Right? Well, not too far off from this area is a cave, the Luminous Cavern. Not much going on in here, save for a few more bits of furniture to collect. Oh, and the boss of the area, of course, a golem. Nothing too hard, just, whip away at it until it crumbles and then whip some more. But this time at the red orb. Easy enough. Getting past that, you'll enter a room that slowly fills up with pink liquid. Not sure what that's really meant to be because, it looks like pink lemonade kind of slowly taking up the space. But getting to the top of this area, looks like this giant whatever it was got crushed, and that was supposed to be blood? That's a lot of blood, man. This thing must have been massive. Going this way gets you another whip upgrade, the Yellowstone, which adds electricity to your whip. Eventually, I found this room, and I'm not sure what this is for, but there are numbers, so I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. We'll have to come back later. I take some time to drop off some more furniture bits for the room. God, that remodel's gonna look fantastic when I'm done. And then I decide to head to another part of the castle, the Skeleton Cave. And yeah, that's a lot of bones, just bones everywhere. Some even walk amongst you. I noticed this skull, and if that doesn't feel like a reference, I don't know what does. Seems like our boy Crocomeyer found his way into the Dark Lord's service at some point. It's a nice little reference for sure. If it even is one, I choose to believe that it is, so that's what I'm going with. Also in here, we find Maxim again, only, well, he's clearly losing himself, claiming that Juiced was one of Leedy's captors. Juiced isn't sure what to make of this, and Maxim runs off cursing Juiced as he does, so that's fun. It's a good friend. The boss here is the Skull Knight, and while it's a bit more involved than the other bosses up to this point, it's not all that hard to figure out and beat. In the next room, you'll get the double jump ability, which means that the Ice Fist and its usages are kinda over. Unless you use it for its, actual intent as a weapon. It's still quite strong in that regard. Leaving the Skeleton Cave is difficult because as it stands right now, you have to go back the way you came in. There are a few other exits, but we lack the abilities to properly go that way, so back we go. In my effort to clear out the map, I find this area and beat this living armor, and it unseals a merchant. Alright, cool. There are things to buy and sell. Also, the background looks familiar. Oh yeah, that room with the odd numbers. So that must have been a merchant room. maybe I had to unlock him first, and now those other rooms will have him in them. At least that was my thought. No, it turns out that is not how that works. So here we go. The Merchant. The Merchant is the weirdest thing in this game. The first room is guaranteed to have him all the time. You can always come back here and the Merchant will be here. Those other rooms, they all have stipulations to having him be in that room. The odd number room, your level needs to end with those odd numbers for the Merchant to appear. There's a room with a heart, crest, and even numbers, which means your hearts need to be at an even number for him to show up. One requires an RNG drop from a specific monster, the Noon Star item. Only then will he show up to do business. I don't know why the Merchant, of all things, is so tough to find and honestly even unlock. So many strange rules just so you can buy and sell things. To be somewhat fair, the shop can have pretty good items in them, but nothing so game-breaking that you need to go out of your way to have certain requirements met. This by far confused me the most. It's so odd. Well, as is tradition in these kinds of games, it's now time to backtrack to find new spots to try and get new items and skills. Doing this, I found the Fire Spellbook. I wish I could say it was an easy path to follow, but I did get a bit lost for a bit. In all my back and forth exploration, I just couldn't find where to go. I kept hitting these locked doors with a skull on them, and then these doors with runes on them. I figured I needed a key for both, but I certainly wasn't finding anything. Eventually, I figured it out, or so I thought, and continued on my merry way. The center area of the map is where I was meant to be, but I found it strange. I could only get there after taking a teleport. The layout is getting to be a bit hostile, but progress is progress, even if it feels a bit off. Making my way up, I eventually find this Minotaur boss all too easy. With that done, though, I could continue forward, and I found a dead end. But I got the Wind Spellbook, so I guess there's that. Turns out the proper way forward was back down in the Luminous Caverns, so back down I went. And I found the teleporter. It took me to the Sky Walkway and Maxim again. This time he's being friendly and is even confused at Juiced in his line of questioning. But it looks like his memory is slowly coming back. And Maxim does confirm that Liddy is here in the castle somewhere. He then talks about how he felt like he was getting left behind after Juice gained his proper title of Vampire Hunter. He then explains that he found and brought back Dracula's remains to this place, and that everything going on so far seems to be his fault. They part ways again, and it's back to business as usual. The Skyway also connects to the Chapel of Dissonance, but there really isn't anything to do there because of a locked door. Go figure. So it's back to clearing the Skyway. The boss here is this devil. The devil is a decent fight, but once you learn the pattern, it's not all that bad. Beating him gives you the Night Goggles, which lets you enter a dark part of the map. Technically, you could get through that area without this item, but having it makes it that much easier, so that's kind of nice, I guess. From here, you can go two ways. Either the Clock Tower, which I backed out of because I didn't want to potentially fight death yet, or the Aqueduct of Dragons. I went that way mostly for the map completion aspect, but also for the extra levels and maybe some gear upgrades. Things in here take a few good hits to take down, and they can really gang up on you, if you let them. The blue stone is down here, and that adds some ice to your whip. Super cool, and definitely super handy with all those water monsters that kind of lurk in here. It gave a solid damage boost. The area boss is, well, it's a giant merman who can summon additional mermen for help. Not too bad to beat, though. Hard to believe I'm already 77% done with this castle map. I must really be cruising through this. Oh, hey, this room seems familiar. Wearing that inspiration maybe a bit too close to the heart, huh? Love me some grandfather clock hallways. Also, level 2, monsters? Strange, but okay, I guess. This tall tower has a bunch of fan-favorite Medusa heads, and oh, the Max Slimer boss. What a battle this is. Truly a dance of whips and magic. This boss is the stuff of legends. Look, I can't, man. We're so deep into this game, and this is a boss. If they wanted this to be a boss, they probably should have, placed it way earlier in the castle. As it stands now, it's just a free level up, and that's about it. watch out for the Max Slimer boss. It's really going to give you a run for your money. Get out of here. Oh, now here we go. Death. Except not really. Juiced and Death just kind of have a short conversation about the events kind of taking place around here. Death is confused by the nature of the castle, and, with Maxim. Turns out that Maxim has two spirits within him because of Dracula's remains, I guess? I don't know. Somehow because of this, two versions of the castle have been created. One where Maxim is himself, and another where he is possessed, sort of, by Dracula. Death was very cordial, actually, in offering an explanation of sorts to Juiced, even though Juiced doesn't really seem to get it just yet. Death leaves through a circle gate, and so do we. Also, that really, again, with this, they just couldn't help themselves with this stuff, it seems. The circle gate looks an awful lot like the doppelganger boss fight gate in Symphony. Weird. Taking a step through that gate and landing on the other side, Juiced finally gets the picture, and the strange sentence from earlier, after we first entered a teleporter, makes sense now. The place was different because of the otherworldly nature, or aura, I guess, that he was sensing. He couldn't place it then, but after Death's explanation, it's starting to click. Also, that title card from before, you remember that? I pointed it out. It was hinting at this very idea. Very cool. As a bonus, you don't have to beat the game seemingly to access the second castle. You've been exploring it this whole time, both of them together. I have to say, I like this idea. It feels more organic than the other games, if only because it wasn't, squirreled away somewhere. Making progress like this and getting to what you would think is near the end of the game based off map completion percentage. Remember, I was at 77 then, and then to have that revealed to you that you basically haven't seen nearly as much as you thought, that's awesome. Not gonna lie, this got me a bit hyped up. I was ready to explore even more of this game. I was genuinely excited to see what this game had to offer because of this unique twist on the usual Castlevania second castle formula. So, seeing as how things were kind of fresh, I decided to check the map and saw that now some color has been added. No longer is it gray. It was now broken down into 3 segments. You had Castle A, Castle B, and Castle A and B combined. Now, the only problem would be trying to figure out how to get to the other spots in the other castles. Still didn't really have the right keys or anything like that to open up this place. First things first, though, where do I go now? I had plenty of places to get to. I just needed to figure out, the how. I did a bit of back and forth, finding secrets and getting some new items and armors. Oh, and this spinning cog? I don't know, I whipped it a few times because I could, but seemingly nothing happened. Guess I'll have to check up on this later. Spoiler alert, it had to do with Castle B. I figured it out. I was having a good time exploring the B side of this part of the castle when I stumbled upon another terrifying boss, Peeping Big. What is with these weak bosses, man? I would have figured that, after the reveal of the 2 castle dynamic, the boss fights would start to get harder. But no, this is a joke. Especially considering the B side is supposed to be the cursed variant of the castle, or at least I was led to believe that. Anyway, it definitely looks the part. You can bounce this guy off the wall. Real big threat when you can, dribble the boss. Whatever. I'm still having a good time just, doing my thing and filling out the map. That lime green isn't going to color itself in those lines. Plus, I have a few more knickknacks to find, for our room. I picked up the crushing stone tip for the whip, and it lowers the attack value of the basic attack by a decent amount, but you can charge it up Mega Man style to unleash a solid hit. Plus, you can break certain walls with it. Now, more of the castle can be opened up for exploration. I don't really use this thing for much outside of its intended use case. I ain't sacrificing attack power for a charged whip strike. It's all about that DPS, This hammer room was fun. It's a nice find. I like this type of stuff. And, to be fair, this game has a few instances of this kind of thing. Lure the monster to the hammer and just give it a good solid whack. Very cool. Oh, man. All right, this room, the ball race. I wasn't really sure what this room was supposed to be about at first. So I ended up not making that first race, but I learned pretty quickly what I should have done. So the second time through, a breeze. Also, small side note, but it really kind of bothered me. This game has some awesome looking background art. What the hell happened here? This background looks like slapped ass. The same image on repeat reminds me of some kind of cringy GeoCity looking website from back in the day. You know the kind. Where's that sick music player background at? That would have been cool in here. Or really almost anything else. But this, it's just kind of meh. Oh, now here we go. This is a boss, man. Hell yeah. Legion Saint? It looks so cool. Legion got some wings and looks all kinds of crazy. I think I entered this fight from the wrong direction, though, because there was definitely no boss door, and I was kind of caught a bit off guard due to that. But this fight, awesome. Super cool. Visually interesting. Legion fires off lasers and has little mini legions that it can spawn. Super fun. Best boss fight so far. Speaking of boss fights, actually, I stumbled across Maxim in this area as well, and he's got a bone to pick. Juiced, now understanding more about what's happening here, is able to understand that this really isn't the Maxim that he knows. Not really, anyway. Something split dual personality, something Dracula possessions. You know how it is. Evil Maxim tells Juice that he kidnapped Liddy and will claim her as his once regular Maxim gets his memory back. So, okay, cool. That memory loss was actually beneficial to the situation here. Nice. And then Maxim disappears and this shadow boss kind of takes his place. GG easy, we're moving on. This fight was nothing. I then spent a bit of time swapping between Castle A and B to just, fill out the map. And definitely not because I had no idea where I was supposed to go to next. No, sir. This was just a way to map completion, Got to get that bright baby blue to fill out this map. This went on for maybe a bit longer than I would have liked, but, those are the breaks, I guess, when playing this kind of a game. In doing this, though, I found a few more key items, the Bolt Spellbook and the Tooth of Vlad, so it's working out, I suppose. Heading back to that boss room where Evil Maxim was, we find just regular Maxim. Looks like he's aware of the other self that he has within him. Also, he regained his memory, which is good because he tells Juice where Liddy is, but it's bad because now Evil Maxim also knows. Also, Maxim seems to be at his limit. He doesn't really think he can keep Dracula's influence at bay for much longer. So, armed with his bracelet, we can enter the throne room and time to be the hero. Getting to the throne room with the bracelet in hand is easy enough, and it's no surprise that there's a boss door right here. But it's not Dracula in there. No. It's not even Evil Maxim. It's Pazuzu.
Pazuzu, you ungrateful! I put you through college, and this is how you repay me?
Or at least an interpretation of the old Mesopotamian deity. The fight really isn't anything special, but the boss does look pretty neat, so it's okay in my book. Behind this door, we find Liddy, and her proportions seem wrong. I don't know. She looks mad short here. Like her legs aren't long enough for the rest of her body. There's something about this sprite isn't right. She comes off as real tiny. Also, what's up with this maid outfit? That was definitely a choice. Liddy, anyway, is glad to see Juiced and, vice versa. They have a short conversation about how she was brought here. Seems she was blindfolded and she thinks Maxim is the one that rescued her in the first place. Juice doesn't really want to ruin that idea for her, so instead of hashing details out right now, he asks that they just kind of bail on the castle. Liddy agrees, and then Death swoops in. Because of course he does. He knew now, obviously. He says he's going to take Liddy for himself, which, okay, sure, why not, I guess. Why does she look like a melting cat here? Look at this sprite. You ever see a cat just kind of melting over the edge of something? This is what that looks like a little bit. It definitely doesn't help the drama of the situation. It's kind of funny, actually, but whatever, man. So Death whisks Liddy away to another part of the castle, and with that, we have the new same goal. Gotta save Liddy again for the first time, for the last time, for the second time. Look, what are you gonna do? Oh, look, it's the Minotaur again. Wait, level 2 Minotaur. Is this gonna be a thing? Am I about to get the same bosses, but somewhat stronger? Because, I'm not really into that. Exploring these areas is getting to be a little less fun and a little more... The art in these areas is at least good, so that's fun. Oh, hey, check this out. In the Skeleton Cave, there's a statue crying bloody tears. Anyway, down here is yet another repeat boss, Legion, but dead? Or deader? Undead? I don't know. Look, it's Legion. It's Corpse Legion. Honestly, it's a missed opportunity for some wordplay here. Could have been Legion Core, but, well, whatever. After you beat it, you get a sweet music player background again, only it's really condensed into this gate, and an item for MP regen. But I mean, the real prize is this background, so check that out, man. That's great. After getting lost for the third-ish time, maybe more, I don't know, I lost count, I ended up back in this cave system, and in here I found the boss Talos. You remember Talos? It's the thing that chased Juice down in the beginning, remember? Yeah, it's just kind of been chilling in here, I guess. The fake out with the Armor Knight was kind of fun. I liked that. And it was nice to finally get some payback on this thing. Not too strong. Well, not now, anyway. Couldn't even touch it in the opening. But here, easy. All those levels finally added to something. Keep on keeping on, I suppose. Also in this neck of the woods, we find Death. Well met yet again. For the last time? Doesn't matter? Not really. Death explains that Liddy is with Maxim at the center of the castle, and that she has a role to play in bringing back this place into reality. Blood sacrifice probably being the name of the game there. Side note, I really like the design of Death in this game, actually. That robe with the pattern billowing in the wind, that's a nice touch. But before long, the gauntlet gets thrown, and the fight with Death is about as, well, by the books as it goes. Dodge the scythe, and the sickles he summons around the field. But whoa, that second phase. And now Death has this centipede-like appearance. Not what I would have done, but okay. Interesting concept. Definitely doesn't blow me away or anything. It's just kind of here. It's fine. Whip the head and, that's that. Now armed with the super jump, there really isn't anywhere you can't get to. So, off to find the secrets that this place holds and complete the map. In my quest to find all of the room decorations, well, I did that. I found them all. And now I'm getting ready to go place those down. But I also found these Simon Wraiths while I was doing that, which means Juice had to fight these mock-ups of his own grandfather, which is maybe a little upsetting. Yeah, whatever. Small price to pay for that complete and furnished room. And for a few hours worth of work, Juice did a pretty good job here. I hope he can continue with his interior design side gig. That HGTV show's really gonna take off. And honestly, I can't wait for the next season of Castlevania Concerto of Furniture. We have fun here. Okay, well, that's just about all the map filled out, and everything's ready to go. I guess it's time to head to the last area. Alright, so outside of this place just being a straight shot-for-shot remake of the center area of Symphony of the Night, it houses the final fights of the game. Really, why do they keep doing this, man? Yikes. Anyway, with this we get multiple endings. The endings will depend on where you fight this last fight. If you engage in Castle B, you'll face Evil Maxim, who just killed Liddy, or maybe she's kind of hanging on by a thread, it's kind of hard to tell. Taking him out, though, will end the game, with just Juiced hanging out on a nearby cliff, as so many often do. He remarks on the bracelets he has, and this, clearly, is the bad ending, and possibly the ending, or at least a version of the ending that the Netflix Juiced dealt with in that small subplot if you watched Castlevania Nocturne. Heading into Castle A and finding Maxim, we find that Liddy is okay and that Maxim is himself, so things seem to be pretty good. But then Maxim just kind of asks you to take him out, because he can feel himself losing the fight against Dracula's power. So he all but makes Juiced fight and kill him. With Maxim defeated, Liddy and Juiced appear on the cliff nearby. Liddy has no idea on what went down, but comforts Juiced for the outcome that befell them and their friend group. Together they head home. So this is the neutral ending. It's fine, but we can definitely do better. To get the best ending, well, you're required to enter Castle B and fight Evil Maxim while having both Juiced's and Maxim's bracelets equipped. This does kinda sorta come out of left field if you weren't really paying attention. You needed Maxim's bracelet to find Liddy in the first place, and the game starts with Juiced wearing his. The item description even notes the importance of it to the friend group. So it makes sense that you should have these equipped, especially after you beat Maxim and get the bad ending in Castle B. It does sort of remind me of Soma and the whole talisman thing in Dawn of Sorrow, but that item had literally no relevance to anything until it was required. Not even the item description alluded to anything. You just kind of had to know, and if you didn't know, you failed, and when you failed, you found out. This runs parallel, but it's implemented, I think, in a much better way. So equip those bracelets on your arm and face down evil Maxim again. Taking him out in short order, the real Maxim breaks through because he sees you wearing the bracelets. The power of friendship. He forces Dracula's dark power out of him, and combined with all the Dracula remains that you've acquired, you see this happen. Yeah, Dracula's wraith form. This fight kind of plays out like every other Dracula fight in existence. He teleports around and fires off the usual kind of attacks. Nothing special there. But taking out that wraith form does force Dracula to turn into this thing. What even is this? It's awful, but in a good way? This Dracula form is pretty weak, honestly. Weak. But I'll give it points for being unique. And it has a strong body horror vibe to it, and honestly, I'm kind of into that. And again, body horror is the main focus on things like Resident Evil, and I'm a big fan of that series, so this form, as disgusting as it is, I'm alright with it. As far as the power that this form has is concerned, it's not great. It's not very tough, and honestly, it's kind of a letdown as far as boss fights and even final fights go for Castlevania. That said, it's over pretty quickly. And with that fight in the books, the group is out on the cliff. Liddy coming to, and the guys are trying to hash things out. They start dancing around all the problems that they're facing after this whole ordeal, and they don't really want Liddy to know all about it, at least not right now. Maxim is dealing with the guilt, and Juiced is trying to downplay it so they can just kind of head home, which they agree to after Liddy puts her small foot down. So that's it. And yeah, what an ending. Whatever. In fun news, it unlocks a mode, which is great. Maxim mode is your prize for beating the game and getting the best ending, especially if you end up getting all those furniture things for Juiced's room. Yeah, his room. If you don't get all of them, now the ending plays out pretty similarly, but I don't believe you get any of the extras, so it's kind of worthwhile hunting everything down so you can get the full, true, 100% complete ending. But don't quote me on that. You could probably just unlock it by beating the game and getting the best ending. I don't think you need to collect everything, but it might be a prerequisite, just a heads up. Anyway, Maxim mode lets you fly through the game as Maxim. No surprise there. Now I'm going to level with you. The Maxim sprite is terrible. This sprite is definitely not winning any kind of award, and it certainly wasn't the focus at all. All that work that went into Juiced, it's missing here. That said, if you can get past the weird sprite, this mode, actually pretty fun. Maxim is full strength right out of the gate, so you can just blaze through the entire castle. Well, castles. He has a faster and longer dash, and his attack strength is boosted. He is also able to triple jump, which is about as broken as you might think it is, but it gets better somehow. You have special moves alongside his one and only sub-weapon. These special moves are busted with a capital B. You're going to end up making quick work out of all the bosses and enemies with this multi-form attack, which is long, and you're super invincible while it's happening. The only downside is this move eats a lot of MP, so just manage that and you'll be fine. Low on health? No save room around? Well, use this other command and you're back up to full. Just make sure you have enough hearts saved up. It's about 50 per heal, so, keep that in the back of your mind. Lastly, Maxim here has a screw attack, and no, I am not joking. It costs MP to use, but it shreds just about everything you come into contact with. As an added bonus, and if done with the right rhythm, you can gain additional height with your jumps, which means you can get literally anywhere in the castles with little to no problem. Maxim doesn't level up, not even from beating bosses like Julius did in Aria. So the only thing you can do is find the HP, MP, and heart up containers that exist in the castles. Though again, you don't necessarily need to. You can just head straight to the final boss and, well, call it good. You can't get into the ending area in Castle A, though. You can only get into that area in Castle B, so your map will never be 100% on both castles. With that said, go for it if you want. I did. I aimed for a high map completion, and for what it's worth, I had fun with it. It's all I can really ask on an extra mode like this. So I'm not going to really beat around the bush here. I like this game. I think it's fun. It's nothing too serious, and despite some of the flaws, nothing that's all that bad. Now, I will say the music is a bit off-putting at first. The sound quality is rough, to say the least, but the music itself really isn't the problem. It's the file compression that did it dirty. No favors were made in that regard. I can only hope that the music that I placed in here has proven that, at least somewhat. Graphically, this game is pretty solid. It looks great and has some really nice effects that showed off what the GBA was capable of. Is it the strongest case for that? Maybe not. There are probably other games in the GBA library that showcase just what this little fella can do. I mean, Aria of Sorrow exists, and I think that game looks way better, but that might just be because of the art style. It is what it is. I'm not sure what the best looking Game Boy Advance game is, but this was definitely at one point in the running. Another high point was Maxim mode, despite, Maxim looking like his sprite went through a blender and was an afterthought. But again, what are you gonna do? One other small critique is, what is the deal with this gesture? They couldn't really find a better way to try and animate frustration or something? Because yikes. Story-wise, I know Castlevania was never really aiming for the stars in terms of pushing strong narratives or even really stories as a whole. I know some are better than others, and I will fight forever on the hill, standing for Order of Ecclesia, but this game, it just doesn't have that juice, man. It's got more than most in the series. I mean, the original games were more or less just parodies of the old Universal horror movie monsters. I don't really think they were looking to push any kind of strong overarching story until, well, Symphony of the Night. Now, you might be able to make an argument for Rondo of Blood, but let's be real here, nobody had a TurboGrafx system, at least not in America back then, and if you did, you were one of like 10 people, so relax. What about Dracula X? I know that's just kind of a hyper-truncated version of Rondo, but again, not a whole lot of people liked that game, and it has its own problems. So for the vast majority of people, Symphony of the Night was the first game to be on a widely adopted system that tried to push a storyline of some sort. That game transformed the trajectory of this whole series. Well, at least in the eyes of its fans, and I'm sure the figureheads wanted to really push for something more too. Clearly they did, because they started to throw things into the mix and try to cobble together a cohesive through line for the series as a whole. Credit where it's due, for the most part, I think they managed just fine. The games, barring maybe a few here and there, are pretty great, but Harmony here suffers from having the Symphony team working on it. It borrows a ton from the last project that they worked on, and while that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's not really a good one either. It leaves this game feeling just like a lesser version of Symphony, which honestly is kind of funny. Juiced has a cool design, and he does step up to seal the deal and fight off Dracula as so many of his ancestors did, but just like Juiced, this game lacks identity. Juiced might as well just be Alucard again, and because of that, this game feels like a watered-down Symphony. It doesn't do anything really fun with its characters. Maxim is a stand-in for Richter, being controlled by an outside force. Liddy is, here, I guess, and Juiced exists because this game needed a Belmont. Look, I don't know, I had fun with it, but it's a very safe Castlevania. If all you want to do is explore a castle or two and whip things up real good, then you're certainly going to get what you want from this game, and you know what? Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's all you really need. Like a comfortable room that you take the time to set up just how you like. This game will be here, ready and waiting for you to sit down and maybe relax a little bit, you know? Well, that's 2 down and 1 more to go. The GBA Castlevania games are proving to be better than expected, but what does the start of this trilogy even really look like? Next time, I'll be rounding out the GBA set of games and going full circle with Circle of the Moon. In the meantime, I want to thank you all for coming and, hanging out, spending some time here and watching. If you want some more Vania to watch in your castle tonight, might I suggest this video right here? Or, if you want something maybe a little different from me, here's what YouTube thinks might scratch that itch for you. Until next time, everyone, keep it clean.